Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I am here with.
Hello, I'm Sasha from Slightly Reckless Games. I'm the lead writer, designer, dishwasher, or everything generally. Um, and yeah, we're based in the UK. We're a small little outfit. We've made a couple of games now. First one was Ronin, second one was Berserker, and we've got an expansion coming out for Ronin soon.
And yes, we're here to talk about Rōnin and that Kickstarter that's coming out very shortly. The cover art for this book is so eye-catching. I love samurai epics. I remember in my younger years we used to play the first and second edition of Legend of the Five Rings,
Mm-hmm.
way back in the day. I love that Oni is in the middle of that. It's in red, and for those of you that are not too much into Japanese lore, Oni tend to be, well, depending on your interpretation, could be goblins or demons and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. Let's start at the beginning. For anyone not knowing what Ronin is, how would you best describe it?
I mean, it's a Morkborg hack, in itself. That's the kind of rule system that it's based on, but it's kind of a love letter to Japan and kind of Japanese mythology and old samurai tales. I grew up watching loads of Kurosawa and that kind of stuff, so it's kind of heavily influenced by Kurosawa films and Sekiro and Tenchu and Onimusha and a million other kind of things that people like me grew up on, and probably people like yourself as well. It's set on an Edo period fictional island called Kagenoshima, and it's what's happened is an eclipse happened, and the people of the island kind of celebrated a little bit. There was some festivals, and then the eclipse kind of never didn't leave, and yokai started kind of springing up, and crops were dying, and it's kind of now this mid-apocalyptic setting that the people are trying to kind of deal with as best they can. It's if anyone's playing Morkborg, it's Morkborg. It's like that, but there's a little dash of hope in there, which is um, mostly emblematic of Japanese culture. Those people, they deal with quite a lot of natural disasters, and the culture is very kind of let's all work together to get through these kind of things. So that's why there's a little bit of a dash of hope in there.
It sounds like it is not just a samurai RPG in a sense. This also
Yeah.
has the Morkborg, um, uh, how should I say it, apocalyptic
Yeah.
elements. For those of you that don't know, Morkborg is a phenomenal game. Very easy to make characters, very easy to play. Um, and but all their variations, cyborg, pirate borg, all tend to have that the world is about to end, and you're trying to either stopping the apocalypse or you're helping the apocalypse, depending.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's really exciting to hear about that. If I may ask,
Mm-hmm.
how did the idea for Ronin come about? What made you say? What made you look at Morkborg and say, "Hey, this I could make a samurai epic out of this"?
It's an interesting story, to be honest. So, I played TTRPGs for like well over a decade now. I'm kind of showing my age a little bit there, but um, we'd kind of we'd our group kind of played D&D for a good bunch of years. I think everyone kind of, or at least a lot of people, end up going through the D&D gateway drug, and and then I started kind of DMing. I wanted to try out new systems and stuff like that, so I tried Cyberpunk 2020. This is again going back quite a few years now. So I tried Cyberpunk 2020, and then someone else tried Call of Cthulhu, and then we kind of started experimenting more, and then kind of I got into the whole Free League stuff and started looking at that, and then it was weird. Like I think Morkborg, the internet algorithms had been trying to recommend it to me for a while, and I remember seeing it and thinking, oh, that looks like it's in a different language, or I didn't really know what it was, and it wasn't until I kind of picked one up. I think it was maybe at a convention or maybe in a local game store. I can't remember, but I was flicking through and going, oh, I was like, I didn't know TTRPGs could look like this. Like this is completely different than what I'm used to. Um, and then I kind of started going down the Morkborg rabbit hole and seeing all the kind of third party stuff and how everything had this kind of interesting design philosophy. Um, and like my background is in video production, so I'm kind of work with visual mediums a lot. So I couldn't get the kind of imagery and the graphic design out of my head when I'm like day to day, and I started to thinking how me and my business partner Dom, who I make videos with as well, but he's with me on the TTRPG side of stuff as well. How we could kind of interpret that, and the idea I had at the time was like what might a samurai Morkborg look like. Um, so I started kind of writing and putting stuff together, and then Dom, I said to Dom, I said, "Do you want to come round and kind of maybe have a go at putting some spreads together?" And we did, and we posted them on Reddit just as kind of like basically like a litmus test, and people seemed to really like it. So we were like, "Should we do like a full book?" And we did, and yeah, it succeeded on Kickstarter, and that kind of it's just been going strength to strength since then, really. But yeah, we didn't do like any marketing or anything like that. I kind of now that I know how everything works, I'm like I don't even know. I couldn't tell you how Ronin succeeded. Um, but yeah, I think we were just blessed by the Kickstarter algorithm and passionate people who kind of believed in what we wanted to do, and it's kind of come full circle now 2 years later that I know how everything works and I know how the industry works, and I mean it means I can really like build on that with our expansion that's coming up.
So I feel that when it comes to a Morkborg or anything similar,
Hmm.
books like that, the art has to be striking. And Ronin, it's the cover is beautiful, and inside it not only does it feel like or look has the look in a way of a Morkborg art style, but
Hmm.
it also has its own unique flavor to it as well. So it's a very again, I'll put images up. Again, it's a very beautiful book. Tell us about the art process for this. When you decided to go in this direction, where
Hmm.
did your mind go when it came to art?
Um, so it was to be honest, it was an easy process, which that surprised me. I obviously kind of we work with a lot of collaborators when we make videos and stuff, but it's working with the kind of people and artists we work with TTRPGs is a little bit different. But I knew kind of I had this image of the cover in my head that was kind of it was concrete in my mind of what the kind of choreography and the kind of what it looked like with the title above and the eclipse in the background and stuff like that. So it for the cover it was just a case of finding someone who could match what I had in my head, but with a really cool and kind of unique vision based on what I'd kind of given. And I actually found a guy on ArtStation who is called Tonton Revolver. I'm not sure how much I can say about what
Mhm.
he's a AAA art director for a very big game studio, uh, and it was probably like I think it cost like as much as half of the rest of the art in the book to have the cover made, but it was something that I was I was keen on. I know they say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I was like, I'm going to make sure that if anyone does judge it by its cover, then it's going to speak for itself. You know what I mean? Um, so that's the kind of story behind the cover art, and then Tonton also did the cover art for our second book, Berserker, and he did the cover art for Densetsu as well. We've got kind of a good working relationship now, and he's always asking me if he can put more blood on the covers and stuff. So he's not afraid to push the boundaries, and I like what he did with the cover on the new one. I said it was important for us to have a female on the cover of Densetsu, so that I think it's a cool looking cover, and it goes well when compared to the Book of Yo. But in terms of the art for the internal of Ronin, it was just a case of kind of having a look around and finding people who had an art style that kind of either matched what I wanted to go for or was similar or who could work on the kind of creative vision that I had. Whereas with this upcoming project with Densetsu, I've made the commitment now to have at least 50% native Japanese artists. It's actually looking like it's going to be 75% around that for the whole book, which um, a little bit about my journey. I've been learning Japanese for just over a year now, probably like 18 months or so. Um, I wasn't in a position really where I could kind of even interact with Japanese people when I made the first book, whereas now I went in October last year. I'm going back for 3 months in just under 4 weeks. I kind of have a lot more connections with Japanese people and that kind of stuff. So I thought it was important for this upcoming project to try and get kind of native voices, working on the project that's inspired by the country they live in. But it's something that I try to take a lot of time and try to be really considerate when it comes to artwork. It's the same. It's strange how it has parallels with the video side of stuff. We do the same thing with music when we make a video. It's really important that the music fits the tone, and it can take a while to find the right track. But once you've got the right track, you can kind of start building on top of that. And for me, it's the same with finding artists that kind of they can be wildly different in style, but they'll still have a cohesive kind of style when it's brought together in the book, if that makes sense.
So, for anyone that's not familiar with Ronin, what can someone be in this game, and who are the antagonists?
Um, so, in terms of character classes, you've got all your kind of genre tropes in there. So, you know, Ronin, samurai. Like, I tried to be a little bit different with some of them. So the samurai is kind of a little bit bookwormish. There's kind of three variations, maybe four variations on sword based classes. So you've got Ronin, samurai. There's a sword saint. Then you've got your stuff like shinobis and sumos. You've got kind of spellcaster adjacent classes like Yamabushi and Onmyoji. And then we've got kind of like a Yakuza / gambler class, which is called Bakuto. And I'm probably forgetting a class or two there, but there's a good variety of kind of what you would expect from a samurai-based game. Drunken Monk, actually. The Drunken Monk's cool. It's got an ability called Roadhouse where he can rip someone's throat out, if you're into that. But yeah, it's got all those kind of familiar classes that you would expect from a game like this. And then we're adding some kind of more out of the left field in the upcoming expansion.
Mm.
In terms of antagonists, so the Eclipse, as I said before, has kind of brought about these yokai. I think there's around 10 or 12 in the core rulebook. These range from like kind of Oni, as you mentioned at the beginning, kind of like these big horned monsters with clubs, to a woman who can stretch her neck really long, which is a little bit weirder. It might be a little bit less expected. I think that's called Roroku Korubi. I might be getting that wrong. You might have to cut that out. But yeah, so not only is the kind of yokai and like monsters to be fighting, if you will, you've got the kind of inhabitants of the island who are all struggling. So the leading faction would be the shogunate, and then kind of you've got kind of sub factions around the island, like the Shadow Clan, which is the shinobis, the Ronin Brotherhood, which is kind of like a group of Ronins who don't want to like serve their lord anymore, and that you got. So the way it's set up is that all these factions are kind of desperate, and you're in amongst it alongside not only the factions who are kind of trying to survive, but the yokai who are kind of ruining everyone's day as well.
Mm. So we should really talk about the Kickstarter, because you have a lot of stuff happening with your new Kickstarter coming out, like a starter set, more books. But before I jump into that, I just want to ask one quick fun question.
Yeah.
What's been the most memorable death that either your characters have been through or someone else has been through in this game so far?
Oh, a memorable death. That's a good question. It's strange because of the way the book's set up. The first time you die, you you go to Yomi where you have to fight a boss in the underworld, and if you beat the boss in the underworld, then you get to come back and have a second go at life. So when I kind of picture death, sometimes it's not an actual character death because they end up coming back and carrying on. I ran a game for a local game cafe I think it was just before Christmas last year, and there was so I ran, actually it was like I ran Trials of the Tangu, which is a free mini adventure we've got out at the minute to kind of celebrate and promote our Kickstarter. And there's a bit in the trials where the second trial you go into like a dream sequency memory thing, and someone was playing a samurai, and for anyone who doesn't know, the word samurai kind of in Japanese means to serve. It's important that if you're following the honor tenets provided in the game of Bushido, then you should never disobey your lord. And she was in this kind of memory where the eclipse had just happened, and it had been kind of ravishing crops and people were kind of struggling to survive, and she was ordered by her lord to go into the village and collect the taxes just as normal, and she decided that she wasn't going to do that and she was going to challenge the lord to a duel instead. So she actually won the duel, but she lost a lot of honor for kind of challenging her lord. And then it was funny because it was such like an epic thing, and then on the next trial, on the way up to the mountain, she fell trying to jump a gap, and she just fell to her death. And it kind of encapsulated what kind of game it is, where you can have these kind of epic challenges of honor, and kind of you can win a duel, and then but if you make one wrong step climbing a mountain, then that's the end for you anyway. It was just a nice juxtaposition, you know what I mean?
This new Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
We have a starter set and a bunch of new books coming out. Tell us about it. Where shall we begin?
So I'll start with Densetsu. So it was kind of the way the idea started was, I knew we were going to do an expansion at some point, and I said to Dom that I kind of wanted to format it a little bit differently than a normal expansion book. So Densetsu is a collection of short Japanese tales inspired by actual Japanese folklore and myth, and kind of actual old tales and stuff. I've had my head in Japanese history books for like the last 4 months. So those tales, being based on actual Japanese myth, all have kind of at least one or multiple game elements attached to the tale. So the GM can read the tale. It kind of helps with world building, and kind of they're all set on Kagenoshima, so it's all kind of set within the world. They can kind of use it as inspiration if they want to use it for like storytelling, but it's got all the game elements you would expect from an expansion. So Densetsu's got new classes, weapons, armor, cultural events. I'm kind of really trying to build on the history of the island, and build out what it was like before the eclipse, how it's kind of the eclipse has affected it, and kind of we're adding new locations and new factions and stuff like that as well. So Densetsu, the way it kind of the way it ended up being is, this is kind of more, you're inspired by actual Japanese history and folklore. It's kind of a little bit more grounded. It's less heavy on the kind of yokai and monsters side. It's more about these like famous duelists. So one of the classes we've got is inspired by Miyamoto Musashi. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's like one of the most famous samurai of all time. Wrote the Book of Five Rings, so all the features are based on the Book of Five Rings, and that's been quite an interesting class to work on, to be honest. But they're all kind of based on Japanese samurais and history and that kind of thing. And as I said before, because of the nature of the book, it was important for me to try and kind of make that commitment to having a large cohort of Japanese artists work on it in kind of traditional ukiyo-e and woodblock style artwork. So that's for the people who, kind of might be looking for a little bit more of a grounded experience in Ronin. Obviously, we still have the kind of mythical element. The eclipse isn't going anywhere, and there's still the yokai knocking about. But it's just kind of that's kind of building on the history, and it's more focused on actual Japanese history. And then the other book, which is kind of like the other side of the coin, if you will, is the Book of Yo. So the Book of Yo is the darker side of Kage no Shimmer. It's not just a bestiary, although there will be 100 plus yokai in there. And honestly, I've got fucking loads of yokai books just like sitting around the house. That's a book by Shigeru. I think this one's by Shigeru as well. So I've been like deep diving into old actual yokai, and some of them like you wouldn't kind of believe the ones that exist, and the ones we kind of put in there. Obviously, we've got like your kind of classic ones, so like with Phoenix and Kitsune and Tanuki and stuff like that. But we've also got like some of the lesser, weirder ones. There's one called I think it's Tofu Kozu, which just means like small boy holding tofu. There's one that's murderous bedding. There's one that's it's called Taisho. I can't remember the Japanese name, but it means General of the Ceramics, which is like a little guy that's made out of knives and forks and plates. Well, not knives and forks, but chopsticks and plates and stuff like that. So it's going to be, it's not just like a bunch of stuff to kill. It's going to be a lot of stuff to kind of, there's spooky ones, and there's kind of weird ones, and there's funny ones, and it's it hopefully will give game masters the kind of opportunity to throw something that isn't just going to be combat yokai at the players. And it's not just, as I said, it's not just a bestiary. It's got stuff for kind of rituals and texts, which are our kind of versions of spells and cursed items and stuff like that. So this is for the people who maybe want like your more spooky Japanese horror inspired samurai experience. And then, you know, if you want the full shebang, get both books. And we were going to be doing a nice slipcase for both books and the core rule book. And then we've got the starter set coming out, which, you know, I know it's quite a popular thing to be doing at the minute, and I'm not afraid of jumping on a bandwagon. So we're going to make what will be a good entry point for anyone who kind of wants to dip the toe into Ronin and see what it's like. It's going to have everything you need in there, so character sheets, condensed version of the rule book, pre-gens, dice, punch-out tokens, maps, and then I actually started working on writing the adventure yesterday. I kind of planned it out in my mind already, but I actually started the writing process yesterday, and it's inspired by, for some reason, and I'm glad of this. Samurai stuff seems to be making a little bit of a resurgence. I can't take credit for starting that resurgence, but hopefully it was because of us. But Shogun, you know, last year was hot, and Blue Eye Samurai and Assassin's Creed Shadows has just come out. Ghost of Yotei is coming out later this year. I'm actually going to climb the mountain where the game's based. But Blue Eye Samurai kind of starts in winter, and it started getting my brain going into like, okay, what if I did a 4-part adventure, and what if it was set kind of over 4 seasons? Because when I was in Japan last year for the first time in October, it was like they actually have 4 seasons, whereas I'm not sure whereabouts in the US you're based, but I'm based in the UK, and the only seasons we get are like different shades of grey. It's just grey all the time. It's either raining or it isn't, and it's the kind of that the only way to distinguish seasons is like, oh, it's a little bit warmer today and it's a little bit colder. But in Japan, they were like distinct, like, you know, the leaves were turning that beautiful orangey golden, and then I've got a friend who lives in Tokyo, and she sent me videos when it was snowing in winter, and it just seems to have such a kind of distinct 4-season system that I was like, it just makes so much sense to set an adventure across 4 seasons and kind of hopefully have some like cool twists and stuff like that. Yeah, so the starter set will have a condensed version of the rules and a 4-part mini adventure that players can jump in. But these expansion books are kind of, they're sold separately. They're kind of like your classic expansion books, if you will.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Um, uh, Before I ask you about this other book, actually, I'll
Hmm.
bring up the image now. The Trials of the Tengu.
Hmm.
I have to ask. So you must have done an incredible amount of research to
Yeah.
produce these books. If I may ask, what's been your favorite, like, I guess, negative information? Is there anything in this process that you saw like, wow, that's a great source of a great thing of either history or culture that really, like, I don't know, either surprised you or expanded your understanding?
That's an interesting question because, as I say, I've been reading non-stop. Like the whole this whole room's just covered in books about like either samurais um, or yokai and stuff like that. I was reading a collection of short tales last week, maybe the week before. Um, there was one that really stuck in my mind, and I'm not sure whether it'll make it into the book or not as an adaptation or something like that. But it was a weird one, man. So it was about this. There was a small village, and a son, like a family had a son's born, and the in the village there's another family who has a daughter that's born at the same time, and they decide that I can't remember when this is. I don't know. It might have been pre-Edo period. Hey, I'm not sure. But the families decide that because they're born close together, that eventually they should be married, and they can combine the two families and that kind of thing. They're not. I don't think they would do it, especially like they weren't royal families or stuff like that. I think they were just kind of like normal families in the village, and as a kind of promise to that marriage, they give a golden hairpin to the daughter, I think it is. Um, and so they grow up, and it turns out that one of the families that are the parents of the son, they have to leave to go to a different part of Japan. Um, I can't remember. I can't remember what happens that means they have to leave, but they have to go somewhere else anyway. And so this kind of promised marriage for when they both got to 18 is kind of like derailed a bit. But because of the way the culture is over there, they expect that the promise will still be kind of held. So the daughter gets to 18, and um, not long after she was born, she has a sister. Um, and when she gets to 18, the daughter is supposed to be married, and the son doesn't come to marry her. She starts to fall ill, and she ends up being bedbound, and she's kind of stricken with grief that this promised marriage, and it's all kind of suggested that it's based on like spirits and kami, and kind of because the promise is being broken, that's why she's fallen sick and stuff. But eventually he returns um, to kind of honor his word. But by the time he's got there, she's died, and then he's kind of like stricken with grief. But then on his way out of town, he bumps into uh, the sister, and then they kind of hit it off. And she says, like, why don't we get married? And then they spend, I think, a year away from the village. And then when they go back, they they go back to tell the father of the sister that he's gonna, because the guy who wants to marry this sister now, he's like, oh no, the dad's gonna be like fuming, he's gonna be angry at me that I've kind of married his sister and I didn't marry his daughter. And then when he gets back, the daughter that's been bed down, who was supposed to be dead, she's been dead and buried. I think like she she takes over the body of the sister and says like, "Thank you for spending the year with me. I'm finally happy that we, managed to, have the life that I wanted together, and now I can rest as a spirit." And she just like robbed the sister's body for a year, and it never really explains like why she did that. like, like she obviously she's doing it for so she can rest. But it doesn't explain why the sister just kind of lets it happen, and then she's like, after the year, she's like, "Oh, what have I been for the last year?" And it just it just stuck out in my mind as a tale that kind of, because a lot of them are very overt and kind of they don't they're not subtle in kind of what they're trying to communicate, if it's like a deeper meaning or if it's just kind of, to be scary or what have you. But that one just stuck out in my mind as something that was kind of just different than the other ones. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a different tale than I'd been used to reading at the time, so it's always kind of stuck out in my mind. And as I say, I'm not sure if we'll adapt it for the book, but yeah, it just stuck with me. Interesting one.
Hmm. It sounds like really unique and interesting stories really help
Yeah,
inspire you to write.
absolutely. Yeah, especially coming from I think Western culture. We deal with a lot of kind of our own storytelling kind of stereotypes and stuff like that. Hero's journey or good versus evil, all that kind of stuff. Whereas a lot of the stories that I've kind of been exploring um, in like Japanese culture and stuff, there's a lot of grey area, and like it's not as kind of clean cut in a case of like, oh, there's a good guy and there's a bad guy, and then the good guy must vanquish the bad guy. Anyone who's watched kind of Ghibli films will know that it's never that kind of simple. There's always a side to the story of what might be the antagonist, and there's always kind of a lot of changes in the case where the antagonist ends up being a protagonist and helps the protagonist and stuff like that. So seeing the kind of roots of these stories, and especially like, I grew up playing Pokemon and stuff like that, and I've been playing Mario and since I was young, and kind of seeing that all of these creatures and things that I grew up on are all based on real Japanese myths, like Kappas and Nine Tails is based on a kitsune with 9 tails, which is dead famous. And I think you kind of take it for granted, not actually knowing, not living in Japan or not being part of that culture, that it's all based on actual history. And it's been kind of nice to kind of do our own interpretations of those things that have kind of made them something that made their way over to the Western world.
This love of storytelling that you enjoy, is that something you're trying to emulate through your games as well? Or are you trying to give players a unique experience?
Yeah, so the I spoke about it yesterday actually. The core rule book was made 2 years ago, and as I discussed, the kind of process in making it, and our sensitivity reader at the time described it as a love letter to Japan. It was kind of, even though like I'd saved up to go on a trip to Japan, and I used my savings to pay the artists and stuff to get it off the ground, and so it was nice that I managed to go last year. It felt like that was a risk worth taking, but this time around, I feel so much more kind of confident and immersed, and actually like in a position to really kind of tell these tales in a way that is authentic and genuine, and especially with, like I said, like I mentioned, with the art. Um, I'm hoping that this isn't kind of like, it's not a project that's full of like Western viewed Japanese stereotypes. You know what I mean? And this is going to be, it's all, especially Densetsu, it's all kind of based on actual Japanese myth and history and and tales that exist. So I'm hoping that it's as genuine and as authentic as I can make it, and I'm hoping that it gives, as you say, GMs and players as authentic and a genuine experience akin to the tales that were told around those times as well. And especially with the yokai, it's like, as I said before, that there'll be the ones that you expect in there, but there'll be ones that you won't. There's one called Bakizori, which is kind of becoming, for some reason, it's becoming our mascot. Like when I sent the kind of briefs and the list of yokai out to the artists that we work with, everyone wanted to do that one first, and it's called Bakizori, And all it is, it's like a sandal that's come to life, and it's on our preview page, and it's becoming like a little mascot for us. Um, so yeah, I'm kind of hoping there's, as much as there'll be stuff in there that people are expecting and kind of will be looking for in a samurai dark fantasy experience. I'm hoping that there'll be things that people haven't seen before, and there'll be things that go, "Hey, look at this! Like, I've never heard of this." And then you look it up and you go, "Oh no, it's a real yokai from myth and stuff." So yeah, I'm hoping that it will give people a a more unique and genuine kind of Japanese experience.
And I could help to notice how different your covers are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Ronin, you have this. Someone about to do seppuku, if
Mm-hmm.
I pronouncing that right. And just to let viewers and listeners know, Morkborg in general, their books, and Ronin is no exception, it has some mature elements. So definitely,
Yeah,
anyone
yeah,
running this, definitely talk to your players about it before
yes,
anything. Before, but yeah, you have this, but then you also have this very action-packed cover.
yeah,
There's a story in itself there, and then you have something like this also, which is like very. It gives me again a sense of a very philosophical book,
mm-hmm.
almost that feel
Mm-hmm.
from the cover, and of course, this one has your like a very anime-ish,
Yeah, yeah.
posing of a figure of some sort. Since we're talking about this, Trials of Tango. Now, is this another book? Is this another thing coming with the separately, or is it part of the starter set?
It's just it's a mini adventure that we've released for free. It's on our website. I'm not sure if we're gonna print it. Maybe we'll have that as a stretch goal or something. But it was just basically something we could send out and give back to the community that we've kind of created, that will act as kind of a taster, if you will, or a teaser as to what the kind of Densetsu experience is going to be like. Um, and obviously, it's got a Tangu. So the book itself is based on a tale called The Trials of the Tangu. Um, we've adapted it to be in Kage no Shima, and those trials have become game elements. So I don't want to give too much away because players will want to play it. Um, but it's basically three trials. You're going to a mountain in one of the prefectures of Kage no Shima to learn this mythical technique from a Tengu. The technique's called Tatsume no Kami, I think, which is like tornado slash. Um, and in order to kind of learn that technique, you have to pass the trials of the Tengu.
Mm.
And it's with it being a mini adventure, it's quite linear. It's just like kind of a three trial adventure. But I'm hoping that it kind of communicates what we're going to be going for with Densetsu, in the sense that it's the tale is written on the kind of left side of the pages, and then on the right side of the pages it has all the game elements, whether it be like a shrine or a trial or combat or the technique or the weapon that you can learn. So yeah, it's there just to give people an idea of what we're going for, and because it's free, people can download it, and you can download Ronin on our website for free. It's like a text-only version, just so if you wanted to try it with your group, there's no kind of financial barrier to entry for Ronin if you wanted to give it a go.
Going back to your Kickstarter,
Hmm.
we mentioned the books, we mentioned the starter set. Is there anything else you're planning to add to this? Also, is there like special stretch goals or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm doing like 15-hour days every day at the minute, but yes, we're working hard on lots of stuff. There's stuff that we've kind of talked about. So like, we'll be doing a GM screen, which is much requested, and custom dice, and there'll be a kind of cloth banner, which is like a kind of similar to what samurais would hold when they were going into battle. Uh, I had a meeting yesterday with a music producer who specializes in Eastern style music. We're hoping to, as one of the kind of early stretch goals, to have kind of like a core music track list that we will make that you can use when you play the game. So it'll have like themes for dueling, or themes for battle, or kind of themes for just adventuring and ambience and stuff like that. That will hopefully, if the Kickstarter does well, we'll be able to add more tracks to that. and maybe even like get it pressed on vinyl, if all goes well. But yeah, we've got a lot of stuff I can talk about and a lot of stuff I can't talk about. But I've probably already said too much there. Someone's gonna smack me on the wrist later. Um, but yeah, like I was speaking about it yesterday. I feel this is our third kind of project now. Ronin was our first, and then we did a Norse mythology book last year. And I really feel like I know how this industry works now. I've made good connections. You know, we've got a good cohort of artists that we're working with, and a bunch of new ones from Japan that we're working with. In terms of like manufacturers and kind of designers and stuff like that, I really feel like we're in a space where I can confidently offer these things, and have no kind of issues about like, so for example, on the first Kickstarter, Ronin did, obviously it did better than we were kind of expecting for the first couple of days. So we were like scrambling to find stretch goals, and we were like, oh yeah, what if we do tarot cards? Not knowing how tarot cards are made or anything like that. It was just kind of, we offered it, and then when it came to production, it was like, oh, where'd you get tarot cards made, and how much do they cost, and that kind of stuff. Whereas this time, I know how much everything costs, and I know where we can get good quality stuff. So yeah, I'm hoping that the kind of experience we've garnered over the last 2 years is all leading us up to this Ronin expansion, where we can make a bunch of cool shit that people like, hopefully.
Excellent. So when would the Kickstarter be out? When are you hoping to be out?
The Kickstarter launches on April the 15th. I'm not sure when this will go out. If this is before it, you know, keep an eye out. If it's already out, go and back it. But yeah, it's on April 15th, and it's going to run for 3 weeks.
Excellent. I'll make sure to put the links in the description below
Nice.
this video. Is there anything else about this project that you wanted to share that I haven't asked you about?
It's not necessarily about the Kickstarter, but please, like, anyone who is interested, or you know, is considering buying the game, join our Discord, because we've built kind of like a really cool little community now, and people are making third party content in there, and we're always talking about, like, I'm in there every day talking about like the process, and you know, people will ask me about this and that, and I'll try and be as much of an open book during production as possible, and give advice to anyone who wants to make third party content, not just for our game but for any game. Happy to talk about like design processes and how we kind of make our stuff. So, you know, Morkborg has this really good effect, I think, or at least it has done over the last few years, where it's kind of generated this ripple effect where people have it's inspired people to make things, us being one of them, and then that's kind of inspired other people to make things around those things. So any way that we can kind of continue pushing that creativity and you know, that drive to make things that other people can enjoy is important to us. So yeah, join the Discord if you're interested.
Mm. I think that's a great way to end the segment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll put links to all that in the switch below. Um, Thank you so much for talking to us about Ronin and the upcoming Kickstarter. Very excited about that project. And to our viewers and listeners, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next time.